Hey guys, so as promised, I wanted to start putting up some more videos regularly on here because I think, we've been getting a lot more engagement on my Instagram page, which for those of you who don't know is Chronic Motivation. And, one of the topics that I really wanted to talk about is the idea of bullying and sort of what that has looked like on social media as it relates to chronic illness. And it sort of has been coming up in its own in a lot of different ways in the last couple of weeks because a lot of the direction on my Instagram page has gone in the way of what I like to call taboo topics. And having discussions and conversations about things that I'm not seeing really happening anywhere else on social media, or at least not regularly, and not with the perspective that I have about how to sort of broach those topics. As some of you know, and some of you were involved with, a few days ago, I did a 3 hour live chat on Instagram's live chat feature, and it was really great. I had a lot of engagement. There were a lot of people who stuck around and weighed in and were really supportive. And of course, everybody's not always going to agree, and I think that's totally fine and reasonable. But I think it's important for us to really, whether we're sick or not, find a way to be able to express our thoughts and opinions in a way that's respectful and responsible and educated, which I really hold a lot of value to. And like I said, the idea of bullying has come up a lot lately because since some of the topics that I've put out there on Instagram on my page have been sensitive and with a different approach than what you would normally see, I think a lot of people are supportive, but I think there's enough people that are getting a little bit confused by the messages, and I think are having a hard time sort of redirecting their thought process because so much of what's being put out there on the internet right now is lacking substance, and it's really lacking reason and process. And so what I mean by that is, on any given day, you can hop on to social media, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook or whatever else, and you can start scrolling through your feed. Let's say Instagram, for example. You can start scrolling through your feed, and you'll start seeing a lot of the same memes and the same tone, and even if it's different memes, a lot of the same tone and a lot of the same messages. Um, and that's sort of what I call, just, lazy interneting in a sense, which is basically like you don't have to put really any thought behind it. Sometimes you don't even read the whole quote or whatever, you just like it because thousands of other people have liked it. And it's very mindless. And so what I've started to do on my page is I've started to challenge a lot of these things, not necessarily even because I always disagree, but because I do think it's important that we think and that we really understand what we care about and why we care about it, and that we're not just blindly supporting something because it's the thought or the message or the opinion of the masses. And so, along with that, the idea and the topic of bullying has sort of been woven in and out of posts in the last couple of months because, since our society unfortunately has had this upward trend of bullying, or at least that we know about, since the internet has been on the rise in the last 10, 15, 20 years, people have had a lot more access to put out content and, say really whatever they want behind the protection and the security of a computer monitor, and with the ability to fire off on their keyboard whatever it is that they think, without having the repercussions of the immediate backlash of the person standing in front of them, which is super dangerous because I think the whole point about, knowing that you're about to say something terrible to somebody else is that you will be saying it to someone who will, at the very least, have the ability to defend whatever the opinion is. And so, since people have gotten nervy And unfortunately, this is happening often enough in schools with younger kids, and even high school, teenage, college. There's a lot of discrimination and a lot of hate happening. Unfortunately, especially in our current world, with our the president of our country. um, I think that we've sort of gone in this direction socially of really honing in and focusing on what, that bullying exists, and advocating to sort of get rid of it, which I am totally in support of. And but what the problem with that is that we have become so sensitive and so misguided about what bullying actually is, that anytime anybody wants to speak his or her own mind about something, or raise a concern, or challenge someone's thought, or have an opinion that doesn't fit in with whatever the masses it feels, all of a sudden that person is being labeled a bully, which I think is very, very dangerous, and loose-lipped assigning of a term that isn't quite accurate. That has, like I've said, that I've seen that start to be woven in a little bit, or a lot of it, in social media as it relates to people with chronic illness a lot lately. And it's funny because I think some of you, or many of you, will be surprised to sort of hear this conversation coming from me, because I am chronically ill. And I think that's probably, in hindsight, been probably the most alarming part, or confusing part, that people who have not quite been on board with some of the things that I've been saying, that I, as someone with a chronic illness, could feel so differently than what so many people are feeling and thinking, in the way that people are behaving, and my opinion about all of that, because it almost feels like I imagine that I'm betraying a community that is trying to represent something. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, that community is representing something that I don't feel relates to me, and that I am not on board with in a lot of ways. It might have something to do with my age. It might have something to do with being a New Yorker, and living in a fairly intellectual and educated city. It could be the way that I was raised, the fact that my background is in communication studies, and I have always had sort of a resistance to falling in line with the ideas and thoughts of other people, let alone people on the internet. Um, but the real truth of the matter is that I do have a very different opinion about a lot of things when it comes to sort of viewing different sites and different messages and perspectives that people who claim to be in the chronically ill community are putting out there, um, on their platform. And that's another word that I want to talk about. When the unfortunately, social media and the internet has given people a platform. It's given people a way to communicate an opinion that they feel entitled or supported in representing, simply because they have the vehicle to do so. Sort of like I am right now, right? Who am I? I am a 32-year-old young woman who's living in New York City on the Upper East Side, sitting on my couch on a Thursday night, and because I have something to say, I turn on the camera on my computer and I'm saying it, and this will end up on my YouTube page, right? But the thing about me, and why I care so much about all of this, is I am an educated person. I put myself through undergraduate school, and I have a degree in music business. I have a degree in communication studies and mass communication. I have a degree in business communication. And then I put myself through grad school, um, and that degree was in public communication, which was a lot of PR and journalism. And I did my focus on healthcare communication, and my master's thesis on patient advocacy, which was entitled The Best Methods of Communicating with Cancer Patients. And so that's my academic background. And then I am also a sick person of, well, on January 25th will be 33 years. I've been sick since birth. And so I feel credentialed to speak my opinion because of that reason in a big way. And the third and final reason that I feel like my opinions and my thoughts are supportable, if you will, is because I have had a 12-year career working in healthcare. So I have the perspective of a patient, I have the perspective of someone who works as a healthcare administrator. I've been working in healthcare, hospital, oncology, operations management for most of my career. I've always worked in healthcare since I graduated college in 2007. And sort of linking both of those together, the patient side and the administrator side, I'm an educated person. So I know the difference between facts that are being put out there on a meme on social media and facts that you're reading in a peer-reviewed medical journal. I also have a lot of a clinical background from the experience that I have with my profession and my disease. And I have family that are actual clinicians. So if ever I have any question about the medical information that I'm speaking on behalf of, I will always make sure that the stuff that I put out there on the internet is actually reliable, because I feel, again, that when you take advantage of a platform and you put yourself out there in a public way, you have a responsibility to make sure that you are not misleading anybody. And so for me, what all of that boils down to and what that all gets back to is my original topic, which is bullying. And the reason I want to discuss this is because I feel like it's become so prevalent that, within, let's talk about specifically the chronically ill community, because that's why we're here, right? Within the chronic illness community, and I say that loosely, online, and I say that loosely because I think the chronic illness community is not necessarily all people who are chronically ill. I think there are, unfortunately, a good number of people who are either not chronically ill at all or sick at all, who are just attention seeking. And I also think that there's unfortunately a good number of people who might be sick but aren't as sick as they claim to be. And that might be because they want the attention, like the former group of people I just mentioned, or because they just don't know any better and they're trying to keep up. Because I think in general in the chronic illness community, there's a lot of competition to be sicker than other people. And so with all of that said, what ends up happening is you have this community, or this, let's say, this presence of people who are saying that they are chronically ill, however many actually are and however many actually aren't. And then you start having these idioms and these stigmas and these messages that are sort of circling around that are just blindly supported. A lot of these statements and these perspectives and the way that things are presented are so, for me, so incredibly foreign than what I have ever experienced and what I am used to as somebody that is chronically ill, that I can't help but be immediately concerned by the information that's being put out there, because I find that a lot of it is false. And I find that a lot of it is doing the opposite of motivating people to fight their chronic illness. It's, behind the guise of it being motivating, it's actually quite depressing and debilitating and sort of facilitating the process of someone being more and more self fulfilling and less honest about what's actually happening in their lives. And I'm not saying that speaking on behalf of just myself. I'm saying that as somebody who has worked very closely with cancer patients for the last 12 years, and any other chronically ill person that I have ever met in my entire life, has had the same kind of strength and motivation that I feel I have been fortunate enough uh, to feel or be consumed by. And, and I actually don't even take credit for that. I think that it's something that, when you're chronically ill, you don't have a choice but to sort of be those things. But in a lot of ways, I think that, online, this is sort of being misrepresented and I feel like I, as a chronically ill person, am being very much misrepresented. And what I mean by that is I consider myself to be resilient and strong and tough and motivated and driven and passionate and empathetic and smart and all of these things that are because I'm sick. Now, I have no idea who I would be if I wasn't a sick person because I've never had the opportunity to compare. And I actually give more credit to people who do have the opportunity to compare because they have a loss, right? When someone's diagnosed later in life, I always say that I give them more credit. But for me, I've never had that opportunity to compare. So for all I know, I could have been the same exact person with the same amount of compassion and understanding for other people that I do as a sick person. But my gut tells me, and as self aware as I am, that I am not the person that I would have been if I had not been sick, because being sick gives you sort of a reason to be grateful and to appreciate things that you don't have to necessarily appreciate every day because you're not lacking them when you're not sick. Simple things like right now, right? I am not doing anything special. I'm just sitting here on the couch making this video on a weeknight after work. And there's nothing really so magical or special about this, except for me, there's everything magical and special about this because I've been hospitalized for periods of time and I've been so sick that I was 50 pounds heavier and only managed by steroids and without medication that could address the condition that I have. And um, I have been lying on my bathroom floor and had to call 911. Living alone in my apartment can be really scary. And for me, any moment that isn't those things or other things like waiting for an authorization to come back for the infusions that make me function as well as I do, or sort of getting the debt collector phone calls from all the medical bills that I have that creep up on me as a single sick person living in New York City. Any moment that is not those things, where I'm not experiencing an acute medical crisis or anxiety as a result of the stress that relates to my illness, I feel like everything is beautiful. Everything is great. There is nothing that I can complain about in this moment because I feel relatively okay. I'm obviously well enough to make a video right now. And I think it's really important that, when people are dealing with chronic illness, that they understand the difference. And so a lot of these messages are sort of getting lost on the internet because there are what I would say are interlopers or people that don't belong, um, in these community conversations because they aren't actually part of the chronic illness community. And so there are a lot of people perpetuating um, laziness and perpetuating uh, being helpless and hopeless and not being able to continue with their lives because of chronic illness. And of course, there are people who are very sick and who can't function as well as I can in this moment. And I've been that. I'm 30, like I said, I'm 32 years old. And I've been much sicker than I am now, or at least more symptomatic, I should say, than I am now. But I've always figured out a way. And what I want people to understand is that there is always a way for just about anything that you could possibly put your mind to. And the problem with everything that I'm saying is that it is not so welcome in a community of people that like the attention for the other thing. So, I've seen people talk on the internet or on social media in general about how it's a known fact that they won't be able to graduate college because they're chronically ill. But I did it, and it's a known fact that people aren't able to live on their own because they're chronically ill. But I'm doing it. And it's a known fact that people have to live off of Medicaid and live off, get Social Security and, be on disability because they are chronically ill. Yet I'm working and I've always worked full time. And my point in this part of the conversation is not to compare in a way that's saying like I'm better than, but I'm saying what I want to do is to empower people to understand that there are ways to do whatever it is that you want to do. It might not be the traditional way, and frankly, it will likely not be the traditional way, but there are ways, and there's a lot of resources, especially in this country, the United States, that we can tap into. And it could be as official as, utilizing FMLA with your job, which is the Family Medical Leave Act, or it could be as casual as messaging someone else who's dealing with the same symptoms or the same medical condition that you are, and understanding, identifying a role model in the community and reaching out and saying, hey, how did you do it? How are you kicking ass? Because I want to kick ass. And the mindset of wanting to kick ass has to exist. Because if you're sitting around saying, like, woe is me, and everything's terrible, and I'm never going to amount to anything, well, then of course you're not going to amount to anything. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy. And like I was saying, the problem is that when people are comfortable in that world and like the attention and want others to believe that this really is all they're going to amount to, because there really is no work in doing nothing, right? When someone comes along like myself and starts questioning that or challenging that, or giving, God forbid, giving alternatives or other options for how someone can um, go through life and navigate through this thing we called chronic illness, all of a sudden, I'm a bully. Or all of a sudden, someone else with a similar mindset is a bully. Because nobody wants to be challenged and nobody wants to be questioned. And the funny thing about that is, I've always said that as someone who has a public platform, which is really what social media is, if you're going to go out there and claim to be sick and claim to be, a resource and knowledgeable and or even an expert about whatever it is you're talking about, you better be able to answer questions about whatever it is the hell that you think other people should believe that you're discussing. You should be able to communicate your ideas thoughtfully and effectively. And if somebody asks you about anything that you're discussing, you should be able to do it in a way where you don't feel defensive, where you don't have your guard up, where you're able to hold your own, because you should be confident about anything that you claim to be an expert on, because otherwise you shouldn't be claiming to be an expert, or you shouldn't be claiming to be knowledgeable about it at all. And so what ends up happening now is, all of a sudden, if you are concerned and you say, oh man, something doesn't seem right about this, it doesn't matter how respectful or nice or kind or passive you are. When you ask that person about whatever it is he or she is talking about, they will block you, or they will fire back some nastiness, or they will delete your comments, or whatever it is, or at the very worst, they will call you a bully. And I wanted to discuss quickly the difference, what a bully is and what a bully isn't, because I looked this up recently just out of curiosity to see, because I think we're using this terminology so loosely, that I wanted to see more specifically how it's actually defined. And so I put this meme together. I actually put it up on my page recently and differentiated the two, because I haven't been called a bully a ton, but I think I'm seeing it a lot and I'm hearing the word a lot, and it's been very concerning to me. So basically, we'll discuss it here as soon as this page loads on my phone. So bullying, when I looked it up on the internet, um, it's listed as a recurring and deliberate abuse of power. So basically, over and over and over again, we're not talking about like one backhanded comment, or you're a jerk, or you look like a monkey, or something like that, or whatever it is, right? We're talking about repeated malicious behavior. And it says, for an incident to be considered bullying, the aggressor must want to hurt somebody. And I think it's really, I'm making all sorts of fun mistakes here. I think it's really important to hear that statement and process it again. The idea that the aggressor must want to hurt someone is super important, the intent, right? Because I can go on to the internet And for me, my intent is always to, like I said, to clarify, to educate, to empower, and to make sure that people are being thoughtful and that the information that's being put out there is actually legitimate. Um, so what happens is if you ask a question, or if I ask a question, or I ask for clarification, or if I say to somebody, hey, I've actually never heard anything like that, pretty interesting, but I'd like to learn more. Can you give me, I just Googled it. I don't see anything about it anywhere. Can you give me an idea of where I can find an article or where I can find something textual that would support this claim that you're making? And then they go, or they'll say, like, it's just a known fact. That for me is such a huge red flag. But regardless, me asking for that additional information or that confirmation of fact is not bullying. It's sincere and wanting to understand where that information came from, and really going deeper than that, because I probably think you're full of crap. That is true. I'm not trying to deny that, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's not always the case, because sometimes it is. But my intention is not to make you feel bad, and my intention is not to make other people feel less than or insecure or anything like that. My intention is always to make sure that, like I said, that the integrity of the information that I'm seeing is actually validated by resources and fact and truth. More than that, it says that what bullying is not is disliking someone. So just because I don't like you, or just because I blocked you on my page, or don't respond to a comment that you write, doesn't mean that I'm a bully. It simply means that I might not like you, and that's fine. People have the right not to like other people. Excluding someone. So again, um, people have the right not to like other people. You don't ever going through life, that's going to happen. You're going to interact with other people who don't include you in things because they don't connect with you. That's sort of a passage of life. Asking questions, that's a huge one that I just sort of went over. Just because someone is asking you questions doesn't make them a bully. And sort of to counteract that, I challenge people to ask me whatever they want. Ask me a question, bully me. If you think, don't bully me, but if you think that something that I'm saying is concerning, or if you think that I'm not being honest about my condition or whatever it is, ask me whatever you want, because I would never be defensive about something like that, because I'm actually sick. Um, having an argument. So having a disagreement or arguing with somebody else doesn't make you, having a difference in opinion, it doesn't make you a bully. It means that you're actually thoughtful and thinking and using your brain, and you have an opinion that, God forbid, is different than somebody else's. And expressing unpleasant thoughts or feelings regarding others. I mean, I think that one can be on the fence a little bit. I think everything that I'm saying should be presented in a way that's thoughtful and respectful. So, for example, I tend not on my page, since it has a good amount of followers, to ever weigh in on other accounts on Instagram, because I don't think it's my place. I think everybody has the right to determine who has valuable information or not. Unless I felt someone was doing physical harm, potentially could physically harm someone in the community, or mislead someone to the point where they would harm themselves, then of course I would step in a situation like that, or in a way that I maybe would have to really think about. But with that being said, I if I were to say that I don't like someone's account, or I don't think that someone is being so forthcoming, or I don't like the way this person behaves, or whatever it is, there's red flags or whatever it is, that's not being a bully. It's just me expressing an opinion. So being a bully would be sitting around and plotting to take someone else down. Like if I were to say to a bunch of people on Instagram, come on, let's go trash this person's page, and every day for the next month we're going to call her ugly. Like, that's a representation of bullying. But the reason I want to talk about this, though, or at least put it through some of your minds, is because this has become more and more of a thing now where people are so sensitive and really so defensive about their pages and what it is they're going through, or whether it is they want you to believe you're going through, really is the key. That when anybody asks them a question, all of a sudden they're a bully. And it's happened very infrequently with me, because I tend to navigate through those conversations in a way that I would like other people to understand that my intention is not to hurt anybody, because it isn't my intention. But I have had other followers of mine reach out to me and say, Becky, I don't even know what to do. I saw something on a page today about an illness that I actually have, and it was concerning to me, and I was afraid that this misinformation would lead other people to not be strong enough to tackle or battle whatever it is that they were going through. And I wanted to provide some clarification. Like, these are really sincere, thoughtful, open-minded individuals who genuinely want to help the chronically ill um, patient population, and then they start to weigh in or expressing an opinion, and then all of a sudden they're blocked, or all of a sudden they get lambasted by people who, in a lot of cases, aren't as educated, or are ignorant to the bigger picture. And then the B word comes up. And so I just think it's really important that we're careful with the words that we use. Not try to have this false sense of confidence when we're on the internet, because it is so easy um, to say whatever it is we want without, like I said, that immediate reaction of people being like, whoa, like, where is that coming from? But at the same time, we shouldn't be afraid to express our opinions. We shouldn't be afraid to express concern or raise awareness when we feel like something is being misrepresented, or if you feel misrepresented in some way. By all means, I think we should feel like it's appropriate to navigate through that and to support the opinions that we have. And of course, I would always recommend that you're actually educated about it, that you have the resources and the supporting information to back it up in case someone does come back to you and say, well, what do you mean? Because if you really do think you know something, really know it. Don't just know it because you think it, know it because it's true. Don't just know something because you think it, know it because it's true. And by true, I don't mean because you saw it on somebody else's page, or because somebody else, like if I have Blau syndrome. If I go to somebody else's Blau syndrome page, it doesn't mean that everything I read on that person's page is going to be factual. But if I didn't know any better, or if I was not as educated or well rounded as I am with the knowledge that I have about healthcare and the medical field in general, or being a sick person, I might rely on whatever I saw if I saw that somebody else was going through something similar to me. So, again, we need to be responsible, we need to be respectful, and there's a way to handle questioning and concern with grace. And there's a difference between someone questioning or having concern about something than someone who's just gonna give you a hard time just to give you a hard time. So that pretty much sums up the whole thing. I think that there's this website that exists, the Lol Cow Farm, and it's sort of like a website that basically allows people to come on and post threads about concerning things that they see on the internet, or things that people are posting. And I do think that in a lot of ways it like does lean more, unfortunately, because of how people behave. I think it does in some ways lean more towards what someone would consider bullying, or someone feeling attacked or whatever else. But really, the root of that website, and the root of what I see in so many of the conversations happening in those threads about people with chronic illness, or people, I say accusing lightly, but accusing is the right word, unfortunately, accusing some of these social media accounts, owners, of not being sick. These things are cropping to the surface because they're frustrated. People are frustrated because they can see through it. There are so many people that are consumed by what they claim to have, and are sort of exemplifying or exhibiting. I'm so tired. Expressing this behavior of um, that's so far in such a weird direction of dramatics and like I said, attention seeking, that people see through it and they can't fathom ever behaving in the way that these people are behaving and focusing so much on their condition that it is so prohibitive to them living their lives. So I don't think things like that are all bad, because I think there's a lot of truth, unfortunately, in what I see on pages like that. I don't think it's necessarily the way to go about it, but people are frustrated. People, want to be sick and want to get credit for doing good things while they're sick. They don't want to be known as a community of people that lays around in bed and, like, bitches when it snows and bitches when it rains and bitches when it's sunny out and bitches just a bitch. Like, that's not what someone who has truly been through some shit, like, will ever behave like. And we are all in different stages of coping, and we are all in different stages and have different methods of dealing with whatever it is that we're dealing with. But ultimately, when everything rounds out, I tend to find people who are chronically ill much more resilient than that. So that's it. I hope that for those of you that feel similarly, I hope that you are encouraged by this video, because there's someone that's actually speaking out against it. And for those of you who feel differently, feel free to ask me any questions you want, or maybe, hopefully, in some way, it sort of gave you a new perspective. But feel free to reach out to me and question me, challenge me, do whatever you want to sort of get the information that you need to either be on board or to move on. And we are all just doing our best every day to. That's it. Thank you for indulging.